You will never defeat a narcissist by screaming at them. You won't break them with an argument or with the tears you've cried 1,000 times before. No. The only way to truly dismantle a narcissist is to look them dead in the eye and not flinch, to speak the truth they've spent their whole life hiding from, to stand before them, not to harm them, but to refuse to be harmed any longer. And that is something only a super empath has the courage to do. Because a super empath doesn't just feel, they see. They see through the mask. They recognize manipulation disguised as love. They sense the lie, even when the words still sound sweet. And when they finally rise, not with rage, but with absolute calm, the narcissist has nowhere left to hide. In today's video, you're going to witness what it truly means to challenge a narcissist, and why only someone like you, someone who has been deceived, drained, broken to the core, can stand up, stare into the abyss and say, "I've seen enough." This isn't a battle for revenge. This is the reclaiming of emotional sovereignty, the return to self, and the quiet ending of a dangerous game. Through clarity, not chaos. If you've ever loved a narcissist or are trying to break free, watch this video until the very end, because what you're about to hear may forever change the way you see them, and more importantly, the way you see yourself. A narcissist doesn't control you with brute strength. They control you with the doubt you have about yourself. And the cruelest part is, you don't even realize it until it's too late. At first, they make you feel special. They listen to you, admire you, praise you as if you were the center of their universe. But that isn't love. It's the soundtrack to a psychological invasion. Gradually, the gifts they gave you become chains. Compliments turn into expectations. Tender gestures become conditional. And you, someone who was once free, who once knew exactly who you were, begin to adjust your emotions, your words, even your thoughts, just to keep the peace. A narcissist cannot exist in truth. They exist in roles. Every relationship is a stage to them, where they are the victim, the hero, the superior one, the misunderstood soul. And you? You're just a supporting character, written in to serve the leading role. Maybe you're the one absorbing their emotional chaos. Maybe you're the one always apologizing. Or worse, maybe you're the mirror, reflecting back all the wounds they've never healed, and getting blamed for the image they can't bear to face. But the super empath, once awakened, stops playing the part. No dramatic declarations, no slamming the door. They just stop. They stop reacting to the old script. No more arguments, no more trying to explain the absurd, no more chasing after childish sulking disguised as deep pain. And in that stillness, the old power structure collapses. Narcissists survive on reaction. They manipulate by adjusting others' emotions like knobs on a control panel. But when you stop responding to their commands, when you no longer scream, "I'm hurt," or whisper, "I still love you," you become a space they cannot conquer. They call it apathy. But in truth, it is emotional freedom. And here's what they never expected. You didn't walk away in anger. You walked away in awareness. You weren't trying to defeat them. You simply stepped out of a game you never truly agreed to play, and that act, quiet, untheatrical, carries more destruction than any shouting match ever could. When the super empath steps off the stage, they don't ask for applause. They don't wait for anyone to validate whether their actions were right or wrong. They're not trying to retell the story in hopes of proving they were the victim or the hero. They simply withdraw from a system that no longer aligns with their soul. And that's precisely what causes the narcissist to collapse, because their entire psychological structure is built on one thing: controlling the perception of others in order to validate their own worth. A narcissist lacks the ability to feel intrinsic value. They live in mirrors, not in flesh. And when no one is left to reflect the image they've worked so hard to construct, they panic. Because when the mirror shatters, what's left? Meanwhile, the super empath no longer needs the mirror. They have seen themselves through the inner eye, the eye of someone who has suffered, doubted, questioned, and ultimately found the answers. They know who they are, and that truth doesn't change based on the narcissist's approval, reaction, or silence. This is a kind of strength few people ever achieve, not because they're not good enough, but because they've never dared to go that deep within. But the super empath is different. They've walked through the very pain others avoid. They've faced betrayal, deceit, and the warping of reality, and they've remained standing, not through outward toughness, but through inner stability. That stability makes them immune to emotional manipulation. They aren't seduced by sweet words. They aren't controlled by cold silence. They know that their emotions are their own, and no one has the right to regulate them unless granted permission. And this doesn't stem from arrogance, but from experience. A long, painful, awakening experience, one that taught them the difference between true emotion and conditioned response. And from that clarity, they no longer seek approval from anyone to feel whole. They don't need to be told they are worthy, because they know worth doesn't live in someone else's eyes, it lives in the understanding of oneself. In a world where most people live to be liked, followed, and validated, the super empath lives to be real. That makes them unmanipulable, and therefore the greatest threat to the narcissist. Because once you no longer need fake affection, no longer crave empty apologies, no longer cling to empty promises of change made just to keep you around, you are no longer held captive. You are free. And real freedom doesn't come from walking away from a person. It comes from walking away from the false beliefs they planted in you, that you needed them to feel loved, that you were too sensitive, that you couldn't survive without them, that you were wrong for having boundaries. The super empath, once awakened, no longer believes those lies. They rewrite their story, and this time they are the author, not a character in someone else's twisted script. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds through every wound faced honestly, every moment of refusing the old role, every choice to stay silent rather than react pointlessly. And it's these quiet choices that build a new person, not arrogant, not shut down, but strong enough to stand without needing a single hand to hold them up. The super empath doesn't fight the narcissist to win. They don't need to win, they just need to live truthfully. And that truth is what the narcissist fears the most. Because truth cannot be controlled, it cannot be twisted, it cannot be emotionally manipulated. The super empath knows this. The only person who gets to define their emotions is themselves. No one else. No look, no word, no action can make them lose themselves unless they allow it. But don't get it twisted. A super empath is not someone who doesn't know pain. They know it intimately. They know what it feels like to be betrayed, humiliated, and twisted into a distorted version of themselves that the narcissist wanted them to become. They've cried alone, screamed in silence, and blamed themselves for trusting too long and waiting too much. They know how deeply it hurts to be reduced to supply for someone who never truly loved them. And it's precisely because they know pain that they understand the value of forgiveness. To a super empath, forgiveness is not about erasing memories. They don't try to forget, nor do they deny the past. They forgive not because the other person deserves it, but because they themselves deserve freedom. Forgiveness for them is not a sign of weakness, but a definitive statement. I will not let this pain define the rest of my life. And that is what makes the difference. While many seek revenge, punishment, or public exposure for the narcissist, the super empath doesn't need any of that. They don't look for justice out there because they've already found justice within. Forgiveness isn't letting it slide. It's reclaiming emotional sovereignty. It's draining out all the energy they once unknowingly handed over to someone unworthy. They don't need a perfect ending with apologies or regret from the narcissist. They understand that a narcissist rarely feels remorse, only regret over lost control. That's why a super empath's forgiveness is a unilateral act. It needs no response, no conditions. They don't forgive to fix a dead relationship, they forgive to heal themselves. Some say forgiveness is a gift for others, but the super empath knows something deeper. Forgiveness is a gift for themselves. It's a quiet yet powerful message. You no longer live in my heart as a wound, I've turned that wound into wisdom. Their forgiveness is not soft. It is a high-grade strength, a resilience that rises above retaliation, because they know a narcissist may spend a lifetime running from truth, but a super empath does not. They choose to face it. They choose healing, not by demanding emotional debts, but by ceasing to depend on what the other person does or does not do. That doesn't mean they open the door for the narcissist to return. No, they still set boundaries, crystal clear ones, but they don't hold onto hatred. They simply revoke the narcissist's power over their mind. Forgiveness in their hands becomes a refined weapon, severing every last psychological hook between them and their abuser, once and for all. And that's why only a super empath would dare to face a narcissist like this, not with accusations, not with explosive anger, but with the calm of someone who's walked through darkness, who understands the mechanics of pain, and who has chosen never to repeat that cycle again. They didn't come to fix the narcissist. They came to fix themselves, and once they've done that, their presence, grounded, clear, unshakable, becomes more terrifying to the narcissist than any confrontation ever could be. Because you know what? A person you can no longer make angry, hurt, or break is a person you can no longer control. And in the narcissist's eyes, that is truly unforgivable. And after everything, what truly defines a super empath is not their ability to read others' emotions, but their ability not to be consumed by them. It's not reacting from instinct, but responding from awareness, not seeking applause, but seeking truth. Forgiveness helps them lay down the burden, but it is stillness that makes them untouchable. A kind of stillness that doesn't stem from weakness, but from deep knowing. I don't need to speak to prove anything, because the truth already speaks for itself. And that stillness, to a narcissist, is the most terrifying form of resistance. Because a narcissist cannot manipulate silence. They manipulate chaos, impulsive emotions, angry reactions, endless explanations. But they don't know what to do with silence. They cannot control someone who no longer reacts. And the super empath, after everything, has learned that lesson. Through blood, through tears, through sleepless nights. The super empath doesn't need to win an argument. They don't need to scream that they're right, because they understand, in the narcissist's game, the more you react, the more you lose. But when you go silent, not to endure, but to step out of the game, that's when you reclaim your power. Do you know what scares a narcissist the most? Not your anger, but your eyes that no longer plead, your voice that no longer trembles, the absence of emotion they once used to bind you. It's when you stand there saying nothing, but inside you are someone entirely different, grounded, clear, and no longer under their spell. That silence in the eyes of a narcissist is the cruelest kind of goodbye, because now they can no longer read you, no longer pull you into their vortex of control, no longer make you explain, apologize, or question your worth. They realize the mirror they once looked into has shattered, and what's reflected now is no longer an image they can shape. The super empath at this point is no longer the victim. They become a mirror, but no longer a warped one. They become a flat, clear mirror reflecting the truth the narcissist never wanted to face. And that is what terrifies them. Not the fear that you will fight back, but the fear that your silence will spread, that others might start seeing clearly too, because when you, once manipulated and broken, can now calmly look at the one who hurt you without tears, without needing their validation, without needing an apology, then their power ends. But what truly makes the super empath the challenger a narcissist never wants to face isn't just their silence, it's their intuition. An intuition sharpened by betrayal, refined through repeated cycles of love manipulation, abandonment, until they no longer perceive danger with their eyes, but with their instincts. They don't need concrete evidence, they don't need to hear explanations. Just an unnatural pause in a sentence, a conveniently timed just checking in message right when they start to feel happy again, that's enough for them to know the hoovering has begun. Narcissists are master shapeshifters. When they feel they're losing control, they return, not out of love, but because they can't accept that you're thriving without them. They will apologize, they will cry, they will bring up the past, they will pretend they've changed, and many people fall back into the cycle, but not the super empath. Because once awakened, they don't just sense something is off. They trust that feeling. They no longer second-guess their intuition. They no longer let loneliness distort their memory of the pain. They know all too well. The sweetest words are often spoken at the most dangerous times. They understand that narcissists never come back for love. They come back to reclaim the narrative. But this time, it's the super empath holding the pen. They don't need to react. They don't need to block. They simply don't respond. They withhold the emotional reaction the narcissist is seeking. They refuse to be pulled into a negotiation about a pain that never should have happened in the first place. And this detachment, it's not because they've lost their heart. It's because that heart is finally in the right place. A narcissist can change tone, change tactics, change personalities. But the super empath is no longer the same person. They've walked through fire, and they're no longer afraid of burning. They've endured the starvation of emotional validation, and they no longer crave that addiction to feel alive. So even if the narcissist returns whispering, "I miss you," or crying, "I can't live without you," the super empath will simply smile and stay silent, because they know if love requires compromising your soul just to feel wanted, then it isn't love, it's a trap. And when the storms of the past, the wounds of manipulation and deep emotional pain that once weighed heavily through the years begin to fade, the super empath doesn't just stand firm, they begin to shine in their own radiant way. They've learned that true liberation doesn't come from waiting for someone else to rescue them, but from recognizing their own worth. They now know that inner happiness is not a gift bestowed by another, but something they build for themselves. Through every experience, every tear they've shed, it is in the moment they learn to forgive themselves that they truly begin to love themselves and cultivate joy in their lives. This healing is not just about overcoming emotional wounds. It's an art of living, independent, sovereign, whole. The super empath understands they do not need another person to validate or complete them. They have drowned before in the flood of pain and insecurity, and yet they chose to rise, step out of the darkness, and paint their own life's canvas. A canvas that needs no missing piece, because everything they need is already within their own heart. They understand that true happiness is not the presence of another person beside them, but the peace found within. It's the clarity of mind, the ability to listen to their own heart without being swayed by the noise of the world, and once they reach that place, they become unshakable, a calm island of peace in the chaotic sea of life. The super empath teaches us that sometimes letting go is the ultimate act of love. Letting go, not because they're weak or defeated, but because they know that real happiness cannot be built on dependency. And he already feels the real thing. He pictures the real realm in his head, not because it's simply his imagination. They no longer wait for someone else to affirm or care for them, because they themselves have become the source of joy, peace, and freedom. With every step forward, with every scar that has healed, they become stronger, more confident, and fully aware that their future lies entirely in their own hands. And when you witness that transformation, you realize that true happiness can only be found in inner freedom. That is the message this video seeks to deliver. Only a super empath would dare challenge a narcissist like this. Not with aggression, but with awakening. They don't need anyone else to define their worth. They walk boldly on their own path, healing and living joyfully, entirely on their own terms. And if you're still here, listening, feeling, resonating with every word that just echoed, then maybe you're not just watching a video, you're revisiting your own journey. A journey that at one point you might have believed you wouldn't survive, but you did. You made it through. And more than that, you're becoming the one person a narcissist fears the most. An awakened, empowered soul who can no longer be manipulated. They may have once controlled your mind, distorted your reality, and made you doubt yourself, but today you've named it for what it is. You're no longer silent. You're no longer surrendering, and you no longer need to scream to be heard. Your calm, clear, and grounded presence alone is enough to bring their game to an end. A super empath doesn't fight with violence, nor do they retaliate with hatred. They win through awakening, through compassionate discernment, and through the silent power of a soul no longer ruled by fear. And if you're walking that path, the path of becoming the strongest version of yourself, know this: you are not alone. This community is here to walk with you. Together, we're not just overcoming pain, we're transforming it into wisdom, into light, into a voice for those who have yet to find theirs. If this video spoke truth to your heart, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who needs a wake-up call. Because when a super empath speaks, they don't just heal themselves, they open a path for many others to step out of the fog of manipulation. Keep seeing clearly. Keep speaking the truth. Keep standing strong, just as you always have.